Sir, there's this new company called Sega, and I think they're going after the market of older teenagers. Should we be concerned at all, or what's happening? No. They will crash and burn in their own timing. Uh, okay, if you say so. Sir, Microsoft just released their console called the Xbox, and I think they're really going after online multiplayer chat. Should we actually try to be a competitor in this kind of market? No. We will succeed over them with our extensive library of games, with arguably the best system to ever be made. All right, I hope you're right, sir. Sir, Google is now releasing games that you can kind of stream like Netflix movies. I think this time they might have the advantage over us. Do you think they'll finally take over? I'd love to see them try. So last video I discussed why Nintendo saved the video game market with Atari's crash with the ET games, and Nintendo came in 1985, essentially saved the day for the video game market. And coincidentally, we're coming up on the 35-year anniversary with the release of Mario coming out in 1985, and now it's 2020, so that's 35 years. Congratulations, Nintendo, you did it! So it's been 35 years as Nintendo has been the top of the food chain in the video game market, and one has to think, how have they survived this long and being on the top? And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, and frankly, how Nintendo's going to exist forever. It's nuts. So there's definitely a lot to talk about in this certain video, but before we get started, hi, my name is Adam, and if you're new here and you're a human being, maybe you should click that subscribe button so that you can join our community of other human beings and find out when these videos as well as our weekly podcasts come out with no problem because you subscribed. So if you're so inclined to and you haven't yet and you're new here, click that subscribe button. All right. So how exactly has Nintendo been around for so many years? How are they going to last the long run? How are they going to be on top of the game for pretty much as long as they're going to exist? Let's get into it with the first reason why, and let's really look at the way they treat their IPs. So while we might not be the biggest fans of the way Nintendo kind of handles their IPs and the way they, quite frankly, sue people for using their IPs. In fact, more recently in the game Dreams that was just released on the PlayStation Store, some people were creating in Dreams different models of Mario, and guess where Nintendo was on that front? Yeah, they weren't fans of that, and they took it down immediately. So we might not be the biggest fans of the way they handled their IPs and the way they handle lawsuits in that kind of fashion. It's a big reason why they're the kings of the gaming industry now, why they keep setting trends. It's because of the intense care of their IPs. I mean, if we even look at their past a little bit with the handling of their IPs, of letting other people borrow their intellectual properties. I mean, you all remember about Hotel Mario, right? You don't remember Hotel Mario? How do you not remember Hotel Mario? Oh, that's right, because they want to bury that in history, and nobody wants to remember that. See, way back in the day, back when Philips actually made the CDI, they asked different companies, how can we make different games? And one of the companies they went up to was Nintendo. And Nintendo said, sure, you can borrow the Zelda franchise, and you can also borrow the Mario franchise. And guess what came out of that? Ah, it's Hotel Mario! Run, everybody! It's Hotel Mario! Stop it, Mom! I don't deserve any of this! Needless to say, Hotel Mario and the other game I can't even think of off the top of my head right now, they were not big successes, neither commercially nor with Nintendo. Nintendo wasn't really a big fan of it, and so they said, you know what? We're not going to be lending our IPs, our intellectual properties, to really anybody else. The only time recently that we've seen a successful lending of Nintendo's IPs was to Ubisoft, and we got Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. And even then, Nintendo had a really intense watch over Ubisoft, and even then, it was exclusive to the Nintendo Switch. It wasn't multi-platform like Ubisoft does, it was exclusive to the Nintendo Switch. So they don't really take their intellectual properties in any sort of joke. They handle them like a lockdown. They put them in a vault. And speaking of a vault, A business model that's pretty similar in this way is the way Disney kind of handles their IPs. And it's another way where people aren't really fans of the way they handle their IPs, and yet, look at where Disney is now. They're huge. They're an empire. What's happening right now? I mean, Disney used to lock their classic movies in a vault, and they never lent out their Disney characters to just anybody. In fact, if you really think about it, Disney pretty much by themselves created copyright claims as they are today. They don't really lend out IPs, and they're known for it. But guess what? Disney is an empire, and guess what? Also, Nintendo is an empire, and both of these companies have this similarity where they do not lend their IPs to just anybody, and that's why they're on top of their game. I mean, looking at Nintendo's IPs, Mario, Zelda, Pikmin, Animal Crossing, even Chibi Robo, even that little guy that we haven't seen since 2015. What happened to him? I don't know. I've seen him at a baseball game. I don't know what happened to him. But Nintendo knows that a protected brand is a forever brand, and they know that just like Disney knows that. We might not be a fan of it, but guess what? They take intense care of their IPs, and that's a big reason why they're on top. And that's a big reason why they'll be around forever. But here's the thing, everybody messes up. Everybody makes mistakes. I mean, we even looked at Hotel Mario. That was a huge mistake that Nintendo made, but a forever company knows that when they mess up, they know how to roll out of it and recover quickly. And that's what Nintendo knows how to do. Hey, anybody in here? Anybody around here? Do y'all remember when the N64 had a disk drive? Do you remember that peripheral that they tried to sell? No? You don't remember the N64 DD? That's because the Nintendo GameCube was announced just a few months later, and they tried to bury that disk drive in history. See, that's the other reason why Nintendo will always be a forever brand, because they know they make mistakes. They know they will make mistakes, especially Nintendo, who loves to experiment. They love putting out quote unquote gimmicks, if you will, but they know to experiment. But they also know sometimes those experiments won't work out, and they know how to recover from that, and they know how to make sure it's buried in history so that you only know about their successes. Take, for example, quite recently, and I know all of you remember this because we're all old enough to remember, the Nintendo Wii U. What a great success that was. Hooray, Nintendo. Everybody had that. No, they didn't. When the Nintendo Wii U launched in 2012, everybody was confused. Your boy was confused, and everybody was right to be confused. It was a Nintendo Wii U. Does that mean it was an expansion? Is this the next generation of games? The next Xbox hasn't even come out yet. What exactly is this? Everybody knows. I don't need to explain why it was a failure, because everybody knows the Nintendo Wii U was a failure. Parents were confused, gamers were confused, and Nintendo knew this was a bad fault. A lot of good came out of the Nintendo Wii U. We got Super Mario Maker. The gamepad can essentially be linked to how the Nintendo Switch was a success. Sure, you can argue that, but I've never seen a console get so much media coverage, so much marketing, and yet buried so quickly. I mean, we're talking about a console that was launched in November of 2012 and was discontinued in January 2017. That's just over 4 years. And a lot of consoles, even when the next generation comes, it's still, being manufactured. It was discontinued. They buried that thing. When it was discontinued in January 2017, what did Nintendo do? They launched the Switch in March of 2017. They knew exactly how to get out of this rut. They knew that the Wii U was a failed marketing scheme. And guess what? The Nintendo Switch was released 2 months after the Wii U was discontinued. Nintendo knew that a mistake needed to be, cover your head, roll out of the car, and that's what the Switch did. Sales skyrocketed. People claimed it was their favorite console of all time. I like the Switch a lot. Maybe not the favorite console of all time, but I like it a lot. And more importantly, they actually brought over Wii U games. They ported them to the Switch because they knew that nobody played on the Wii U. So they ported all those games to the Switch. They knew how to roll out of a failure, and that's why Nintendo will always be a forever company. That makes sense to me. Always be a forever company. Don't judge me, because I love you. Nintendo has been around since the very beginning, and they know how to roll out of failure. Unlike their competitors in the late 90s or early 90s, however you want to put it, Sega did not know how to roll out of their failures. When they tried to launch the Sega Saturn, they didn't know what to do with themselves. They got off the hype train of the Sega Genesis and right into the Saturn, and they didn't know how to roll out of that, and that's why we don't know about Sega. I'm not going to go into the main history of that. I definitely recommend reading Console Wars. It's an amazing book and explains it so much better than I can say in a movie. I've listened to it on audiobook. This video is not sponsored by Audible because, but definitely read Console Wars for a better explanation than I can never do. But that's the thing, is that we know that Sega can't get out of that kind of failure, and Nintendo did. And that's why we see Nintendo still being a successful company, and Sega is now making games for Nintendo. Isn't that weird? So yeah, we know that Nintendo can roll out of virtually any mistakes that they can do professionally and burying all of their past. But guess what? We're about to roll into a next generation of consoles, with the Xbox Series X coming out being the beefy boy that it is, and the PS5 with the finesse. Does that mean that Nintendo Switch needs to upgrade and they need to be the next generation of Nintendo in this time? Well, here's the real reason why Nintendo will always be a forever company, and the real reason why companies kind of follow Nintendo for all this time. I would like to argue that Nintendo has never been known of following the trends of the gaming industry. They've been more known as making the trends of the gaming industry. I mean, really looking at Nintendo's, as they were a video game company, the 35 years of its past, one of the major things is that they reintroduced the gaming industry to the Western market. Thank you, Nintendo. I appreciate that. They also revolutionized the D-pad on controllers. Every single controller that you see nowadays, it has a D-pad, and guess who you can thank for that? Dear old Nintendo. Thank you for the D-pad. It saves lives. Mwah. And a bigger reason why they set trends, and I would like to argue that they revolutionized handheld gaming from the Nintendo Game Boy to, oh, what's Nintendo's latest console? Oh, it's a handheld system. And I'd like to argue that they really revolutionized the way we see handheld gaming. And that's a big reason why I say is that they are trendsetters. They are not trend followers. They have a business model that a lot of companies strive for. You don't get this far in the gaming industry with being just a mere follower, or even more so, you don't get by any industry this far by being a follower. You think Betty White got this far by being a follower in the movie industry? No, she's a trendsetter, and that's exactly why she's America's sweetheart, and you're not going to change my mind on that. My wife is such a rose, by the way. The way I see it, and by the way, as I close out this video, I should really point out that I'm an Xbox fan. I've been an Xbox fan since day one. I say that on the podcast, the Games Groceries podcast, that I love Xbox's model. And yes, I'm a stinky little peasant for thinking that. But I'm kind of seeing this from the outside in, that Nintendo doesn't really concern themselves over Xbox, PlayStation, PC, or better yet, more recently, Google or Amazon. You know who they compete against? They compete against Nintendo. Every single time, every single generation, I feel like Nintendo tries to outcompete itself. They're trying to revolutionize. They are focused on their own vision. In fact, while other companies are looking at next generation consoles, you know what Nintendo is focused on? The next generation of controllers. They're not focused on the next generation of Nintendo consoles. They're focused on revolutionizing the way you control a video game. And we've seen it before with them from the aforementioned D-pad. Without the D-pad, lives would not be the same as they are today. Go ahead, try to play games without a D-pad. I dare you. Don't do it though. Please don't do it. Don't do that to yourself. See, this is the real reason why I believe that Nintendo has the edge over all the competition is because they don't even think of them as a competition. They are in the mindset of setting trends. They're in the mindset of competing against themselves. They're in the mindset of revolutionizing their brand and making a forever brand. And that's why I believe that Nintendo will always exist and why they'll always be, I'll argue this, why they'll always be the top dog in the video game industry. So maybe this video won't age well. Maybe, 20 years from now, you'll be seeing this and Nintendo won't be a thing. But I'm willing to bet that at least 5 years from now, Nintendo will still be a standalone company. Nintendo will still be the top dog. Nintendo will still be trying to revolutionize their brand, and they'll be focusing on going on the beat of their own drummer. They really put an intense focus on their IPs, and they treat their IPs like a forever brand, and their IPs, I like to argue, are timeless, except for ARMS. I don't think ARMS is timeless, but time will tell, I guess. And I'm not even sure what they mean by creating a new generation of controllers. I'm not sure what they're trying to think about, but knowing Nintendo and the way they've revolutionized the industry in of itself, I'm willing to bet on them and know that they know what they're doing. And I can't wait to see what they'll do for the controllers and how companies will adapt that to their own systems. We owe a lot to Nintendo for the way they treated the video game industry, and while we might not be fans of the way they go about suing people for their IPs, they know how to make a long-lasting company, and that's why Nintendo is the way they are. That's why Nintendo has lasted 35 years, said arguably the top, other than PC gaming. I get it. PC gaming is so much better. But Nintendo as a console market, they know what they're doing, and that's why I think they'll always be around. This is why I think that Nintendo will always exist as a company, and not like what Sega is. What's up, human beings? Thanks for watching this video. I just wanted to do a video to commemorate 35 years of Nintendo. We just got news as the filming of this episode, so now the news is 2 weeks old, I guess. But Nintendo, like, the rumor is that they'll be making Mario games, like a whole bunch of remasters and a whole bunch of new Mario games coming for the Switch. And you know what? Nintendo, as I reflected on it, Nintendo like really knew what they were doing, and we have to celebrate them. You can do your own little consoles and the whole little console war that we already have, but we have to really thank Nintendo for what we know the video game industry as it is. That makes sense. Cool. But again, if you haven't already and you enjoyed this video, definitely hit that like, definitely hit that share button so that more people know about games and groceries. And if you haven't yet, click that subscribe button so that you know when all these videos come out, as well as our weekly podcast. So with all that said and done, I'm just gonna go away now. I'm just gonna go over here now. Bye.